Welcome to another session of LeadUP Online Virtual Chats. My name is Samantha Castle and I'm the Senior Manager for Alumni Relations at the University of Pretoria. For those of you joining us today, LeadUP Online is a series of informative virtual panel discussions amongst well-renowned UP academic staff and alumni situated in South Africa and other parts of the world. Each session, we look to address topical issues of public interest that are affecting our society today. We would love to engage with you over social media, so I encourage those of you watching to comment throughout the virtual discussion and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. Before I hand over to our moderator for today, I'd like to thank you for tuning in. We really do appreciate your ongoing support. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce the Vice-Chancellor and Principal, Professor Tawana Kupe, who will be our moderator for our discussion. So without any hesitation, let us begin today's session. Enjoy.
Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, wherever you are in the world. UP alumni are global. Some are in South Africa, some across the continent, some across the world. Hence my greetings and welcome to this session of LeadUP in conversation with the Vice-Chancellor. I'm the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Tawana Kupe, and the Principal of the University. I'm proud of the panel I have here today. All illustrious UP alumni are the best alumni of all South African and African universities. And here you will hear them for yourselves. The topic tonight is a very interesting topic. Is the role of leadership in the context of 4IR in mining, that is the fourth industrial revolution, and related industries. Technological advancement, disruption is a key factor today. But before we get into the discussion, a few things I want you to know about mining engineering at the University of Pretoria. UP, University of Pretoria's Department of Mining Engineering, was established in 1961 and is celebrating its 60th year of excellence in 2021. This panel debate tonight is part celebration for that anniversary. Other celebrations were delaying slightly and perhaps into next year because of the COVID pandemic. But we will not stop celebrating. We are a leader in this field as well. And more, engineering at UP is ranked among the top 1% of engineering schools in the world, not just in South Africa or in Africa, but in the world. Mining and metallurgy are ranked in the top 50 in the world in the 2021 QS subject rankings. On this panel, most of our alumni, as I said, are illustrious. But we also have, I'd like to mention here, the CEO of Murray and Roberts, Mr. Henry Lass, who is part of the panel. You will remember, some of you watched the news or read the news, that we celebrated with Mr. Lass when they gave us the Murray and Roberts Chair in Industry Leadership 4.0, relevant to this topic today. But as I said, all of our alumni are illustrious. So what do we intend to achieve with this panel debate today? To learn about historical trends in the leadership in the industry, the shifts that mining engineering is moving into, and what successes and what leadership styles, understanding of technology adoption and uses will usher us into a successful era in the fourth industrial revolution. And also the demands of the fourth industrial revolution on global engineering leadership, and the way industry and the traditional university, which by the way is transforming to an innovative entrepreneurial university, can partner to shape leadership in 4IR and beyond, of course. Of course, this event is brought to you by the University of Pretoria Alumni Relations, and many of you watching are alumni of the University of Pretoria. We now know from our research that alumni of other universities, deprived by their universities of such events, also joining. You are welcome. You are associate alumni of the University of Pretoria. Without further ado, I would like to present our panelists. So we have Mr. Peter Steenkamp, Chief Executive Officer at Harmony Gold Mining. Welcome, sir. We have Ms. Nozipho Mashinini Dlamini, Technical Services Manager Ed Tungela, welcome, Ms. Mashinini Dlamini. Mr. Andre Lube, Chief Executive of the Ferrous Division of African Rainbow Minerals. Mr. Henry Lass, as I've already said, Chief Executive Officer at Mare and Roberts. Ms. Tarusha Monsami, Engagement and Project Manager. Professor Ronnie Weber-Yamen, Head of the Department of Mining Engineering at the University of Pretoria. So, ladies and gentlemen, alumni of the university and our associates, and anybody who's listening, we're now going to get into our question and answer session. My first question is for Andre Lube and Professor Ronnie Weber-Yamen. Now, I have a rich panel of alumni here. So I'm going to ask each of them to be brief. All of them are eloquent speakers, and they can speak like me, the Vice Chancellor, for a long time. But to allow everybody to speak, you have to speak in short, or I have to disrupt you, like the 4IR technology is disrupting the mining industry, and leadership is needed. So here goes the first question for Andre and Prof. Ronnie. Do you think an increased emphasis on leadership skill will help individuals working in mining and related industries to better cope with work demands? Please remember to unmute yourself. Andre, you can go first, and then Prof. Ronnie, you can go next.
Good evening, everybody. And Prof, thank you for the opportunity. And I'll start the answer with absolutely yes. I mean, there's no doubt that we have to do this. In fact, South African mining needs for IR. Over the last decade, mining productivity has decreased by almost 8%. Real costs in real terms have increased by almost 3%. And then a third of the mining operations in South Africa are operating in the upper, two-thirds of the mining operations in South Africa in the upper half of the global cost curve. So, and also the Mineral Council of South Africa advocates people-centric 4IR, and the focus should not only be on technology, but more importantly, also on culture, upskilling, leadership development, and reskilling of our employees. And through this process, I think we will definitely create a better paid, a safer, healthier, and more fulfilling jobs in the mining industry. So 4IR technologies to enable more modern mining sector is absolutely needed. And that cannot be done without the upskilling of the leadership. So it will enable us to develop a new operating model with real information to make decisions far quicker and much easier. And then, you know, as we know, and we've become to learn about telephone, the new cell phones that we're using, that this technology will also enable multi-devices, anytime and anywhere access, cloud services, to bring operating models to scalability, analytics to enable scientific decision-making, social influence through the social networking that we have to build communities and gather feedback, innovation infrastructure, so as test mines, to turn research into globally competitive products. And also the markets that we're operating in, the potential for new and innovative market entrants, new entrants with less legacy and less complexity. Disruption and innovation will become the new normal for market incumbents. Blurring in the industry boundaries, the relationship between demand and offering is changing and rearranging the value chain. Intercepting additional revenue streams, pre-sale and post-sale, is going to become very, very important. That we move out of this mode of just being, I call it dirt diggers, that we really add value before and after we do the mining. And ultimately that we drive business value through agile information systems, innovative technology solutions resulting in a more mobile and agile digital workforce with improved productivity and performance. And this can only be achieved through proper leadership development and guidance in terms of this phase of the mining industry that we are entering into the world and in South Africa.
Prof. Ronnie, your turn.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Yes, I would also like to start with, without a doubt, I think leadership development should also in the future start much, much earlier, because I really believe that at the tertiary level and beyond, that it's no longer a nice to have, but a have to have. And I think the important role that I'm referring to is not necessarily leadership styles, but rather critical elements that I think will focus on leadership development that can make you a better leader. I think the sooner we can get our graduates to see what skills are needed in terms of being great leaders and how to develop those and practice those skills, the better their chances of success as leaders in the industry. And like Andre have indicated, it's a dynamic environment, it's a VUCA environment, and it's going to become more complex and more dynamic in future. And you need people to lead that environment in such an extent that it's the most effective way of dealing with it. I would like to just say what we've done at the University of Pretoria in my department. We've identified that there was a need for earlier leadership development interventions needed when we were talking to some of our young graduates on the mines. And they were very adamant that the one thing that they were lacking apart from their technical skills that they do have was the fact that they were never exposed to the skills necessary to deal with a high pressure and a stress related environment. And I then got the idea, and I discussed it with my staff, and we said, how can we actually start doing this, getting them in terms of this lack of leadership prowess, that we could actually eliminate that lack, that we could deal with them. And that basically was one of the main reasons why we started the Mining Engineering Leadership Academy in our department some 10 years ago. And currently it's being supported from a devoted support at Marian Roberts to the Murray Roberts Chair in Industry Leadership 4.0, and which is run under the capable hands of Dr. Johan Ace, the senior researcher in the chair. But I think the most important thing for me at the end of the day is that when we look at leadership development, we do all of these courses and we sometimes talk about, is a leader born or is a leader developed? And I'm very keen on the idea that leadership can be developed, but in many ways, people don't know how to develop their own leadership skills. And I think a main focus of the Marian Roberts Mining Engineering Leadership Academy was to teach our students in what way they could actually identify these skills that's necessary and to take them into the environment where they could actually deal with it. And I must say that we've actually had some amazing responses from the students in the context of dealing with this environment where they were now taught what those skills would be that would make them successful. And with all of this, the important thing that we found is that in our postgraduate program, we've actually started introducing emphasis on leadership and leadership adaptability in the context of new technology, and what kind of leader would we have in future that would actually be able to successfully deal with all these challenges that we have. And I can say that what we've already done in the last 2 years with regards to this new thinking that the department has of bringing on board this more technical approach to the department students, was that we've already, with the Marian Roberts support, had a leadership and technology adoption, which yielded an adoption process model that we've actually developed last year. And we also were doing a lot of research in risk profiling pertaining to senior leaders in the industry specifically, and the impact. And I think this is the key issue, the impact.
Yeah, so I'll stop you there. Yes. I'll stop you there, then we'll pick that up again in your next round. Yeah. But hold that point, don't lose that point.
I will not, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so now I'd like to go to our female panelists, Nozipho Mashinini Dlamini and Tarusha Monosami. As a leader and a woman in the industry, what have been some of the most challenging aspects for you to overcome in order to maximize your effectiveness as a leader? Nozipho, you can go first.
All right, thank you, Prof. Good afternoon, is it evening? Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity. I think from an infrastructure perspective, we can agree that mining has come a long way. Mechanization has been part of our journey for many, many years. So as soon as you enter the workplace, it's not about the infrastructure that you struggle with. It's more the softer interpersonal skills that you need to work on and the culture that you'll be joining. Also in the last few years, digitization and automation has also leveled the playing field, and it stopped it from being about, the physical capability, but more about the mental capability. So again, that was also a plus for women joining the industry. And the future is also promising. Autonomous workforces, autonomous equipment also guarantee that it will be a lot safer for women entering the industry. So I would say the biggest barriers has been the softer interpersonal skills, which are more important than the physical, if you listen to what Prof said about leadership. So adequate mentoring and coaching for women coming in, representation becoming key, because you will get women if you have women in your organization. It proves that your organization can accommodate women. I think the culture and also a culture across different operations also helps. But representation becomes the core skills. So companies need to work towards attracting women, because attracting women will also ensure that more women join the organizations as well. One of the biggest things has been women are normally the primary caregivers in their homes and the main home keepers. And unfortunately, if you also have to have a high demand career, like a mining engineering career, that will also bring some barriers. So it's important that the home environments are also quite accommodative of the career that you go into. And I think for some of us that are seen to be making it in industry, we've been able to find that balance where our home environments do support the careers that we've decided to pursue. Women will need to spend a bit more time at home, again, because of the primary caregivers and the homekeeping. Again, the fourth industrial revolution has allowed that to happen, because a lot of our operations have been able to become autonomous, and also automation has been able to assist that we can do a lot of the work remotely. Obviously, that comes with its own sets of challenges, but the industry has been able to overcome those quite well. So fully integrated communication systems have helped. Digital systems have also allowed for core activities to be able to happen remotely. So I think we've come a long way as an industry. Yes, there's still a lot of room for improvement. If we go through those barriers, we should be able to make mining a more equal environment for all people.
Thank you. Terusha, your turn.
Thank you, everyone, and great to see you. If I reflect on my journey of leadership through the industry, I think the one thing that really I pinpoint out is actually becoming comfortable and fitting in within the environment and understanding who I would like to be as a leader and how that's crafted into the environment. And I would say, echoing on what Prof. Weber Youngman and Nozipho have said, is really being able to take your leadership style into the environment and make sure you have the right level of sponsorship and mentorship. And I think that's the one thing that's helped me think about my leadership journey. Touching on what Nozipho's mentioned around the opportunities for women in the industry. If I think back to when I had started and what that meant to me as a leader, I certainly think that the fourth industrial revolution has created more roles and opportunities for women to excel, and not just think of it from a pure production environment. So thinking forward into the future, I certainly think us women can adapt our styles, same as our male colleagues, but at the same time, embrace the changes that are coming to bring about new roles and to succeed in these that we traditionally have not succeeded in.
Thank you, Terusha. My next question is for Mr. Henry Last and Mr. Peter Steenkamp. What do you see as the key factors in creating a leadership and technology balance? Mr. Last, Henry, your turn.
Prof, thank you for the question. And I was hoping that you're going to ask Peter to lead, because this is a difficult question to answer. The first point I want to make is that 4IR is a revolution. It is not an evolution of technology. And this technology is available to leadership to make businesses more efficient. We, as leaders in the mining industry, must adopt this technology, must apply this technology with the objective of making us more efficient and have more safe mining operations. But at these early stages of 4IR, it's going to require a very conscious leadership decision to make a start. And if we are too slow with this, we will find that we will fall behind our competitors. We will not achieve the efficiencies and the safe operations that we aspire towards. But on the other hand, if we are pressing too hard, if we are too narrowly focused on technology, again, I guess we will be confronted with resistance to change in an organization, and we might also not succeed. So for me, it's really about both. It's about more leadership and it is about more technology. But if you talk about a balance, I would say 70% should be leadership and 30% on technology. But getting to the question specifically of what the factors are, I want to emphasize that to me, the appropriate leadership is important. And this is at a more practical level. When we talk about 4IR in very generic terms, it is very, very vague. We need to narrow it down to practical terms, and we need to understand what it actually means for our business. So for me, it is about that appropriate leadership, and that requires from us to understand what the technologies are that are available out there and what is really relevant to our business. Which technologies can we introduce that will make a change and that will bring positive results to the front? Which are those technologies? We need to look at our competitors. What technologies have they adopted? How far are they down this path of digital transformation? And then we need to develop a plan for our own organization and say, well, we have to make a start with this digital transformation. And this is the plan based on the research that we've done that we're going to adopt in this business. And with that approach, we will understand what the implication on the organization will be, and we will be much better equipped to define the appropriate leadership. As I said, it's not a one size fits all. It is really what is appropriate for your business. It's almost like situational leadership, understanding what is required. But this appropriate leadership, I think, goes together with the understanding of the human element. We know that companies that have already started on this journey, those that are successful are those that have not neglected the human side. And by that, I mean the change that needs to happen at the leadership level from the top throughout the organization. And that is really to enable an organization to accept this technology and to enable the organization to apply this technology. So it is creating that enabling environment, which I believe is important. And many companies get this wrong. They focus too much on the technology roadmap. They buy sensors, they buy networks, they start with buying devices, they implement infrastructure, and then they come to the realization that all of a sudden that the benefit that they've anticipated from this technology, the benefit is not there. So for me, the balance is really about the appropriate leadership, which is specifically for your organization, and then the realization that the human element is extremely important to create an conducive environment, or an environment which is will enable this new technology. But one has to narrow it down to become very specific to understand what that balance is that is required. And I say it changes from business to business.
I'm coming to some very specific questions in the way forward. So thanks for that very strong comment. Mr. Steenkamp, your turn.
Thank you, Prof. Kupe, and good evening, everybody. As I'm quite grateful to, as a gold miner, to also be invited to this prestigious panel. Yeah, I don't want to, what Henry said is I fully agree with that. Maybe just to add a few things. Obviously, the fourth industrial revolution change is implicit in that. And to excel in this environment, we'll have to have individuals that are both capable leaders and technocrats. At the core, we are engineers, and we need to be up to speed with the cutting edge of technology. To that end, it's important to register as a professional engineer and to keep yourself up to date with the challenges and changes and trends in your profession. But it's equally important to develop the skills as a leader. The best way to do it is through experience, leadership studies, and obviously mentorship. The World Economic Forum provides 3 principles for augmenting leadership to guide the application of new technologies and to boost organizational performance. And the first is human-centric. Human-centric means that we use technology to boost human qualities, ingenuity, judgment, contextualization, creativity, and social interactions. In other words, putting human beings in the center of our approach and viewing technology as an enabler of, rather than a replacement of human achievement. In other words, technology should make people's lives easier, as well as more productive and more fulfilling. The second principle is that what they call the full circle. They talk about strategies without action is a fantasy. And to fulfill strategy, people must be able to effectively work together, and the experience must be captured to create a source of shared learning that improves their efforts. However, technology should not be a policeman. Leadership must resist the temptation to use technology to corporate control or unnecessary compliance. Rather, technology should serve as a coach, helping individuals to improve, to explore their potential, and to pursue goals. And the third one of these principles is that leaders is ultimately defined by followership. So leadership is about the ability to create followers. So as leadership becomes more distributed, it moves away from the idea of a group of people at the top of a company that guide people either willingly or unwillingly at the coalface through commands. That will change. Nowadays, the leaders will be a broad group of collective in the enterprise, and this requires employees to be truly engaged and to have a greater collective role in defining the organization's future.
No, thank you very much. I'm coming back to you, Mr. Lass. You expressed, I think you expressed a very complex and nuanced view of what ought to happen in this space in striking the balance. Where do you think and how do you think a leadership that has a nuanced approach to leadership and technology should happen? And what skills should they get out of that?
Well, I think when you talk about the technology that are available and what is actually required for a business and what it is that we need to introduce to the business, we must understand at the center that this is a very, very broad topic. So we need to become specific in identifying what the technologies are that is relevant to our business. What is relevant to my mind? What can I introduce to make my operation more efficient, to make my operation a safer environment? And I think once you understand that, you can get down to a point to identify where to start with your digital journey and what technology to implement. And that will guide you in terms of your organization and the readiness of your organization to accept technology in terms of the leadership change that you need to make and how you need to create this a more conducive environment or environment that's more able to accept this technology. So you can't talk about it vaguely. For me, it is important to understand and to narrow it down to what it is that you wish to achieve. What is the technology journey that you want to follow for you?
Okay, thank you. So, Andre, I'm coming back to you. In what ways do you see 4IR and leadership, training, skilling, blending into your own work environment? When you see your own specific work environment, where do you see the blending and what do you see as training opportunities and skilling opportunities for the leadership?
Yeah, I think one area that we are making very good progress in is to use technology, and it is fully supported by the leadership. I think I have to start, and I agree with what Peter and Henry has said, is that it has to start at the top, at a strategic level, and it's got to be supported by the board, and it's got to be endorsed by the board, and there's got to be appetite for let's call it experimenting and sometimes not getting it 100% correct, and also approach where you don't put all your eggs into one basket with one process and one new technology that you want to develop or implement at a mine. But in terms of this integration of the leadership with 4IR, I must say that to me there's a huge keenness from the younger generation coming into our organization to embrace this technology. And if you allow them a little bit of space and a little bit of leeway to explore and to develop and to can also experiment with this. And what I've found and what we found in our organization is that the guys and the team and the guys and the girls are now really coming up with quite innovative ideas at a low cost. You know, in the past, before we had this technology, you could almost not afford to experiment because you put people's lives at risk. You know, you couldn't take a new support pattern underground. You couldn't do a new layouts or whatever, pillar designs or whatever, because if you do that and it fails, people are dead. And what we're finding now is that the technology is developing and the software is developing where we can simulate a lot more in terms of these processes and new technologies and new ways of doing things. And I think the biggest area of development that we're making now and the integration of the leadership is that we start to embrace these technologies. We allow and we buy these software which is really based on very sound scientific processes that is developed at places like the University of Pretoria, based on sound scientific fundamentals, and that then is applied. And the guys are doing all sorts of work on this, and in fact, you even test the little beliefs that people had about certain processes, and you prove that it's either wrong or it can be vastly improved. And by allowing your teams and your people to do that, it really generates a level of excitement. And we've had, I would say, we are on the cusp of major breakthroughs in technology and innovation in our company, where because of this basis of allowing individuals and people to experiment and giving them the tools to do so, but do it in an environment that you cannot break something when you do it in a computer. And then through that process, we've learned a lot. And I think through that, there's also a level of enthusiasm that has grown in the organization, whereby even I want to be careful here, because I'm in that age group as well, the older generation who's been very skeptical about this is now also building up a level of excitement about what this is and what is happening. And I can cite many examples, and I'll do that in the next session next questions that we are having, is where real breakthroughs and innovative value adding has happened in our organization and is starting to happen. And with the skill set of the practical experience of people already in the business, and then with your younger generation coming in, who's very much more versed in terms of this and less afraid to use technology, by combining that, I think we are making great progress here. And there's got to be, I think the fundamentals is here. There's got to be support from the top, enablement from the top, and then also a tolerance to allow, let's call it, low-cost mistakes to be made. And in that way, the adoption of this 4IR is actually can potentially run a very smooth road. And I don't know if I'm running out of time, but it's really a lot to be said of that. And I think things are happening in South Africa. It's really gathering momentum, and I can see and feel the excitement in the organization and the industry in that regard.
Thank you. So I'd like to ask Tarusha and Nozipo again. Where do you think that training, the new training for the new 4IR context evolving as it is in mining engineering ought to happen, or what's the balance between training in the context of a university and training in the workplace or in the job place? What are the complementarities there, and what shifts do we need to make? Tarusha, you can go first.
Thank you, Prof. Tony. So when I think about the changes we need to make, I think about it across 3 dimensions. I think the first dimension is our ability to embrace innovation and problem solving. And we're exposed to quite a bit of this within the tertiary education. And once you get into the job field, you do this on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's quite complementary. Where we need to really shift our mindsets is thinking about the 4th industrial revolution and adjusting to some of the nuances that are coming our way in terms of how we think and shift away from traditional problem solving, embracing factors like AI, robotics, and the innovation that traditionally we're starting to bring into the space. The second dimension that I think about where we might need to make shifts is in the operating model and the culture in which we work, embracing the 4th industrial revolution. Some of our panelists had mentioned this earlier already, in that if you think about how we've worked in the last year, we've embraced technology rather rapidly and seen how we can work remote. You've spoken about autonomous machinery. That's also come into play and it's growing. And I think these things are what we would need to think about in adjusting our operating model, both for a profitability and a productivity perspective. And I see a lot of this happening on the job in training day to day. And the last thing that I think about where we really need to make strides or shifts is in how we communicate and nurture the diverse teams that we are going to start working with as the fourth industrial revolution becomes stronger in our traditional working environments. I reflect on an experience where I had worked away from a mine operations team, and I started working with a team of data scientists to build out a product to help us improve our productivity tracking. And thinking about the styles of leadership that you have to adapt to when you look at diverse profiles within your industry, and in light of how the fourth industrial revolution is going to make this more apparent, I think our communication style and our adaptability to how we think about problems and work through it in a team environment is really where we would need to make our shifts and strides.
Nazipo, on the same question.
Thank you, Prof. And I want to echo what Tarusha has said, and also echo about the importance of taking our teams with us. As much as the professionals that we are bringing from the university do tend to bring already the thinking around 4IR, we still have a big group, because mining is quite labor intensive, of employees and operators who we need to take on the journey with us. And that's normally the biggest barrier to new things that we try to implement if they do not see the what's in it for them. So we need to ensure that whatever initiatives we come with, we take them along with us. What's in it for them? If it's something to improve safety, they need to see that in action. If we are implementing autonomous equipment, they need to know what this means for their work and their jobs, and are their jobs still safe? And those become the biggest barriers to implementing things if we do not communicate those initiatives very well. So from an operational perspective, it's been very important to communicate very well about what the initiatives are, what benefits they are bringing. If it's something to improve productivity, then let it show in terms of the increased bonuses. Even if we increase the targets because the operations are more efficient, we need to also communicate that very well. So I think we need to ensure that whatever we do, we're still quite very labor intensive. Let's ensure that we take the people with us. Let's embed some of those teachings then into our induction processes, our orientation processes. Let's recognize innovation. So when operators, and they do come up with innovative processes and innovative solutions, let's recognize them for that. Let's make them part of the solutions that we are implementing. Change management becomes very critical in whatever it is that we are trying to implement to improve efficiencies, productivity, and cost bases and safety in our operations.
Prof. Ronnie Weber, yeah. What do universities have to bring to new leadership, to training and skilling leadership in a disrupted, complex, and changing environment? What does our education offer to mining, and what are the complementarities with on-the-job training?
I think the most important part for us from a leadership development perspective is literally to start with the students' own leadership abilities, and also to understand that this whole leadership drive is actually started from almost a tripartite perspective, where it's the emotions, the heart, the head, and the hands. And if you can get someone from a self perspective to understand what his own capabilities are and where he's actually need to do a lot of development, I think then he will be in a position to understand how does he actually grow his apex, the direction that he's going to move in as a leader in future. And I think the most important part is when we spoke to our youngsters, in our fourth-year students in terms of this leadership development environment, they were very adamant, and a lot of them did not have any idea what the concept of leadership was in for instance, what is the difference between motivation and inspiration, and how do you develop that, and how do you make it part of your skills that you could get your team to follow you? And one of the things that really excited me is that when we started with this program, we found that we had a lot of the students that they were not thinking leadership, and they were a lot of thinking worker first, and maybe one day I'll be a leader. And I think one of the key issues that we've been driving quite aggressively now is to say to students that when you register as a first-year student, your leadership and your whole career actually already starts. And I think the idea of waiting for more experience and waiting for more ways of getting yourself to be a better leader, I think that's wrong. I think you need to be identifying exactly what it is that you want. How can you develop your skills? And we've identified a lot of skills that related to making yourself a very, very good leader. And I will allude to that when I do the summary in terms of our feedback for this afternoon. But Prof. Kupe, I think the most important part, universities should not neglect the duty that they have to involve leadership as part of a key driver for the success of the future. Because if we're not going to do that, we're going to be caught up with other industries or other countries that are actually going to do that, and actually we're going to fall behind.
Thank you. So Mr. Henry-Las, if you were to answer the same questions, what would you say in this current phase you want to see universities doing in order to prepare students for careers in leadership, not of course immediately, but as they develop in the career ladder in a business like yours?
Well, Prof, I want to say two things. First of all, I think it was Andre which mentioned earlier on that at heart we are engineers. So the technical training that is required for engineers are very important, because that is the foundation for us to operate as engineers. But what universities have to do is to assist the students to develop the necessary skills to actually function well and successfully in this fourth industrial revolution environment. And it talks about leadership, and it talks about more the softer elements of the fourth industrial revolution. But I think later on in the discussion, there's opportunity to get a bit more specific on this.
Thank you very much. Andre, what would you think if when you talk to Prof. Ronnie Weber, a young man, and you say, I need students now to know the following, what are the three things you would say you need? You need to tell him and you want to see in the curriculum.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't hear the very first part of your question. Can you just repeat that again?
Yeah, the first part of the question is, what training do you think students who are going to join your industry? Yes, yeah.
I just missed the word training. Apologies for that. Yeah, I would say to
leadership training specifically.
Yeah, I think leadership. What I would, and I do deal with the profs quite regularly, and we have discussions about this. Is that I think the first part of leadership is that a leader should also be demonstrating his own capacity and abilities. So as we said, the technical training is very important. I also don't know of anybody that has risen in the ranks in any organization or any corporation who has not been able to deliver. So there must be that drive and that tenacity to deliver, to work through disappointments. The old story about the iceberg. What you see sticking out at the top is success. The portion that you don't see at the bottom, and I think is there's got to be a lot of training in terms of that. It's hard work. It is trying. It is dealing with disappointment. It is feedback to your superiors. It is getting into a mode of not accepting, as I always say, the very important formula in the mining business is that bad performance plus good excuses equals bad performance. So that the guy's got to come up with solutions, not to be the reporter of problems. And if you can get that mindset into the leader, and also to realize that they are not the smartest in the team. The leader should actually be surrounding themselves with people that's much smarter than they are, and that they don't have all the answers. That the best answers come from a collective team, and that education and intelligence is not necessarily linked. And the fact that some people have had the opportunity to be educated doesn't mean that they are stupid. So that you can also tap in on the lowest level of employee in the organization, respect them, mutual respect. So I think that element, I remember when I started to work in the mines, and I was a mining engineer, graduate, got my certificate, got the diploma, got the hat, got the ribbon. I thought I knew everything, and very quickly. And in my time, we did not really have leadership training at university, and the organization that I was very fortunate to work for, Anglo American at that time, that they have spent a lot of time in developing us as leaders, and that delayed the whole growth and development process into the organization. So I'm very grateful for the fact that Prof. Ronnie has taken the effort to also include the deal, and grateful to Marion Roberts for this leadership chair, where we can now, because in mining specifically, I think more so than any other engineering discipline, is that it's not about what you do, it's about what your team achieves. And if we, and that element of leadership development is so key, you know. And I think if your original question was what question to Prof. Ronnie, and in terms of what they should be doing, is really that element of understanding that once you know all the technical details, you know very little about people and engaging with teams and working in a working environment. And it is so important to stay humble and to lead and to guide and to show the way, and that the drive towards achievement of objectives and goals and solutions is much more important than getting a list of excuses and reasons why the achievements could not be, the targets could not be achieved. And then, of course, guiding and leading your team and motivating them and inspiring them in terms of new ways, better ways, and challenging them, challenging their thinking, asking them why are you thinking what you're thinking, you know, and get them to really think about what they do, get them and allow them to challenge what they're doing, even allow them sometimes to challenge the instructions or the guide or the task that you give them or the method that you give them. Now, I always say, when I meet a new mining engineer or any engineer coming into the organization, their main objective is not to learn what we're doing. The main objective is to challenge what we're doing, and then from their learning to really apply their mind, and also not to do it in a way that I know everything and I know all the solutions and you guys here are all stupid, you know, is to really interact at a mature level with your peers and your principals, and to drive innovation, new thinking in a way that you almost have to be like a salesperson, you know, and sell yourself and sell your ideas and convince others that you are right and that they should be exploring new ways of doing things with you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So there are two questions that's been asked by members of the audience. So I'll pose 1 to 3 of you and pose the other 1 to 3 of you, and we then should close. So when you speak now, you can add your last sentence to it. We have 12 minutes left. So here goes the first one. I'll give it to Peter, Henry, and Nozipo. It's from a person called the People's MC. How much of a role is unionization playing in the hindrance of automation and the implementation of 4IR related technologies? I'll start with Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. And obviously that is always the big elephant in the room, because the moment you have these, you know, people always perceive automation and things like as creating jobs or destroying jobs and job opportunities for people. And obviously from a union perspective, that is, you know, the kind of destroying their livelihood. But I think in general in South Africa over the years now we've developed, and I'm not talking about specific because it's different in other parts of the world, but your developing countries is kind of here where we operate, and also in Papua New Guinea we find the same things. It is more about really of people actually understanding, and as the people progress and people or the workforce get into younger and more knowledgeable, they actually don't want to do this labor-intensive type of work any longer. We find that a very high level of in our organization, the really labor-intensive kind of things that we do are very much older people doing it at this point in time. So the younger generation really wants to automate, really wants to be part of this fourth industrial revolution, wants to be part of these technologies. So we are very, very quickly changing, and as these leadership in the unions also become, more open to this, we change. And we've actually now seen that we have quite a lot of union support for the Mandela mining precinct that we currently are developing in South Africa, where technologies are actually developed for, labor-intensive things. But at the core of it, I mean, many of these technologies are developed to, in actual fact, make life easier for people, but also to replace hard work for specific people. But we do see unions now changing their minds and actually see that specifically from a safety perspective.
Yeah. Okay. Nozipo, then I'll come to Ms. Tilas.
All right. Thank you, Prof. And I think when we spoke earlier about the impact of training to 4IR implementation, I did say it's important that we take our people along with us. And the union is a spokesperson for our people. And each time that you implement a new solution, it's important that the engagement happens very soon and at the right levels as well. So involving your people, showing the what's in it for them. And with that, if we are automating certain equipment and we're making them autonomous and we're removing people, the people that we've removed, what does this mean for them? Is there a level of upskilling that is going with that? Is there opportunities for education in the new skills that's required to run control rooms that run autonomous equipment? So it's important that the conversation stays alive, and the conversation in terms of what is in it for all our employees. The unions are there to be the voice of the people, and they're playing their role when they do become barriers to certain things. And that's expected. So the communication skills from an engineer or from mine leadership should be there to cover that gap, to make sure that they are part of the process and they form part of the solution. So it's important that collaboration is there between all stakeholders, and we do that through the tripartite divisions, as Peter has said, and through educational institutions like the UP's for virtual reality centers and other infrastructure that we may have. So take the people with you, take the union with you, and start engagements as soon as possible is critical.
Okay. Ms. Tilas?
Prof, I want to support the previous two speakers, but the reality is it is a very delicate matter, and it's something that one has to manage very closely with your unions. But it is about frank communication, explaining really what the benefits are, and I think the safety benefit in a mining environment is contributing greatly to, I think, to get unions to understand better what the benefits of new technology can be. But I think also we have, as leadership, we've got the responsibility when we introduce new technology is to make sure that, or to think about how we're going to redeploy the labor that may become redundant in these processes. How many of those people would be able to upskill for different jobs? But as I said, it is difficult, because ultimately some of the lower skilled employees, there will be fewer of them employed in the modern mines of the future than what we currently see. And that is a reality.
So for the second question, I'll start with you, Tarusha, then come to Andre, and then you will have the last word, Prof. Ronnie Weber-Young. Is the problem not that we do not actually have a role for mining engineers on mines? It seems so few operations have persons solely dedicated to business optimization.
Thank you, Prof. Certainly, yes. Each organization has a specific archetype in terms of how they address continuous improvements or business improvement. And I think as we embrace the fourth industrial revolution and the changes that are about to come, I think it's a question of what archetype are we moving toward? Is this an amalgamation of the traditional engineering roles together with some of the digital and advanced analytics roles that we bring into the organization to enhance this business improvement concept? Or do we go traditional and segregate engineering from the advanced industries? And I certainly think there's an opportunity and a success in actually amalgamating the two roles so that you can leverage the skill sets that you have, but at the same time, you enable each of these individuals to bring in their strengths through their leadership and their core problem solving to help the company with their core business vision.
Thank you. Andre?
I think we don't have enough mining engineers on our mines. And if you have this mindset of people coming in, and mining is a very, very fantastic career in the industry. Mining is not just about digging holes into the ground. There's many, many disciplines. There's from the rock mechanics, ventilation, environmental, rehabilitation, mine design, project evaluations, shaft sinking. You can think about it, equipment manufacturing, use of equipment, all of that, you know. So if you look at these individual segments of the mining, and just imagine we can start to optimize each one of these individual elements of our mining. You know, it's like if you just think about a triangle and you just have one triangle and one linear line of improvement. But if you put another triangle on top of that triangle and another one on top of that, you eventually get an exponential type of improvement in efficiency and output. And if you can combine all of this, you know, it's literally, there's no end to all of this. And also in terms of the digitization of fourth industrial revolution, what we see what's developing now is that it's not about just your own operational performance, efficiency improvements, cost reduction, more profits. It's also about additional value adding of the product that you are mining. I'm fortunate to be in the ferrous metals industry, and where we do the mining the materials that is used for making steel, but it's got to go through quite a process. So we can do from early exploration, you know, through to your metallurgical process, through to your waste material, waste reduction. When I say waste, I mean the byproducts of the material that we benefit, to beneficiation itself, so that collectively through this process that we can in fact produce a far more beneficiated project. I'm not postulating that mines must now go and make the final motor vehicles or whatever, but the development and the integration of our mining process with beneficiation and the ultimate market needs. You know, we're now moving into this area of what we call decarbonization and electrification and electric vehicles and the road towards zero carbon emissions. If you just think those challenges, you know, when I say simple things, I mean things that doesn't come to mind very quickly, just by operating and changing an operating model and improving applying a different approach. I don't want to go into technical details of this. We can produce the same product and produce 40% less carbon emissions just by through this innovative hub that we have and the innovation tolerance that we have and the facilitation that we do through that process. You know, so in fact we need more engineers, and if we allow those individual processes to be optimized, we will add a lot of additional value to South Africa.
Prof. Ronia Webayang, you have the last word. So what does our discussion amount to? New leaders for a new context in a disruptive but opportunity in a rich environment.
I think the most important part for me to come back to the question of what you've put to me with regards to students saying that mining engineers are not being used. One of the key aspects that we drive in the department, it's not your aptitude, but your attitude that determines your altitude. And what we found a lot of times is that students want to climb the corporate ladder too quickly, and they don't have a sound foundational base. And I think that is a crucial mistake sometimes made, where they really want to jump too quick, and then they become I actually say you get promoted to your highest level of incompetency. And the important thing is that you got to go drive those miles that you have to do to actually make yourself competent to become a very eligible, good mining engineer. But I think the most important part for me is the thing that with this quick change in technology, the quick change of knowledge, the new development ideas that comes around, you have to be a person that's a self-learning type of person, and also independent learning, that you teach yourself and that you actually promote yourself as a person that finds the solutions rather than being asked to go and look for the solutions. So I think the key driver for me as the head of department is to make sure that when my students leave my department, that they would be skilled in those skills that would make them wanted by the industry, because they have got this willingness to learn and also show their capacity to show that they can do independent learning. And I think the leadership drive that we have actually enhances that idea that they must follow that, and that will make them very successful in future.
No, thank you very much, Prof. And thank you every one of you on the panel. I think this was a very rich and very complex debate. As Mr. Henry last says, of course, in some ways, a bit of a broad debate requiring some specifics. I think let's treat this as the first in a series of discussions we need to have about such an important topic. So, Prof. Youngman and I will consult this debate, but I appreciate all of your insights, very rich, typical of UP graduates, lateral thinkers, forward-looking thinkers, future-oriented thinkers, which is what the university is positioning itself as, future-oriented, future-focused, and actually making a difference in industry sectors and making a difference to South Africa, to Africa, and making a contribution to the world. Thank you very much, and have a very good evening to all of those who joined us on this call. More is